Welcome back to another volume of the Creepy Marathon Month. This one is about to get dark, so hit those lights, sit back, and enjoy. The Greenbrier Ghost. This is the tragic case of Alva Zona Hester Shue, a young bride who seemingly died from heart failure, but was later declared a murder victim at the hands of her husband, and her ghost led to his conviction. Known as the Greenbrier Ghost, Alva was born and raised in Greenbrier County, West Virginia, and her life was taken on January 23, 1897. Initially declared a natural death, the verdict changed after her mother, Mary Jane Hester, testified that her daughter's ghost had revealed how she was killed. Before the tragedy, Alva's mother had refused to bless her marriage to Erasmus Stribbing Trout Shue, distrusting him from the start. The charming young blacksmith persuaded Alva to marry him in October 1896, unaware that he had served 2 years in prison for horse theft and had 2 previous marriages, one ending in divorce after abandonment, and another after his wife's suspicious death, which he blamed on an accident. Despite her concerns, Mrs. Hester went unheard. According to the Monroe Watchman, Erasmus left his blacksmith shop one day and sent a local boy to check on Alva, who discovered her dead on the floor. Though the county mourned, he requested no further examination, helped dress the body himself, and wrapped her neck in a scarf, high collar, and veil. Witnesses noted that her head was unusually loose, yet no charges were filed, and Alva was buried on January 24, 1897, at the Soul Chapel Methodist Cemetery. Distraught, Mary Hester soon experienced a vision of her daughter's ghost, who described in great detail of how Eramus strangled her after becoming angry over dinner. Armed with this information, Hester went to the county prosecutor, who surprisingly took her seriously. After confirming that Eramus had blocked a full medical exam, the prosecutor ordered her exhumation, revealing a broken neck and crushed windpipe, clear evidence of strangulation. At trial, Mary testified, "It was no dream. She came back and told me he was mad. She didn't have meat for supper. Her neck was squeezed off at the first joint, and it was just as she told me." After just 1 hour, the jury found him guilty of first-degree murder, sentencing him to life imprisonment. A lynch mob tried to hang him, but was stopped by deputies, with 4 organizers later charged. Eramus died of the flu in prison on March 13, 1900, and was buried in an unmarked grave. The motive remains unknown, but the case endures as the only known instance where ghostly testimony helped convict a murderer. The Colorado Funeral Home. When a loved one passes away, we expect the funeral home we choose to care for them to treat their bodies with dignity and respect. However, this was not the case for one funeral home, and the horrifying events that were unearthed in October 2023. Investigators entered a Colorado funeral home and discovered nearly 200 abandoned bodies, some stacked on top of each other, partially covered with bodily fluids pooling several inches deep on the floor, and flies and maggots throughout the building. The remains included people of different ages, stored at room temperature in a neglected building in the small Rocky Mountain town of Penrose. Investigators also found animal remains and bags of packaged concrete that had been given to grieving families as fake ashes, leading them to believe their loved ones had been cremated. The horrifying discovery was made when neighbors reported a foul odor coming from the building, which sat near a post office and a few scattered homes. The funeral home's owners, Carrie and John Halford, fled once they realized they were under investigation, but were later arrested. They now faced nearly 190 counts of abuse of a corpse, along with charges of theft, money laundering, and forgery related to their business, Return to Nature Funeral Home, which operated out of Colorado Springs while storing the remains in Penrose. Prosecutors revealed text messages showed that the Halfords were under severe financial strain and feared being caught for mishandling the bodies, and as the numbers of remains grew, one of them suggested disposing of the bodies by digging a large hole and treating them with lye, or burning them. In another message, John Halford described transferring a decaying body before casually placing a dinner order. adding that he wanted a shower because he had gotten people juice on him. Authorities determined that 23 of the bodies had death dates from 2019 and 61 from 2020. Families who had hired Return to Nature for cremation services were later informed by the FBI that their loved ones' remains were among those found decaying. Investigators had to identify the bodies using fingerprints, dental records, medical implants, and DNA. Among those discovered was a former Army Sergeant First Class who was meant to have been buried at a veteran cemetery. When investigators exhumed the casket, they found remains of a person of a different gender inside. The veteran was later reburied with full military honours at Pikes Peak National Cemetery. Return to Nature, which began operating in 2017, had promoted itself as offering cremations and environmentally friendly green burials without embalming fluids. Prosecutors estimated that the couple earned $130,000 in cremation services that they never provided, while spending thousands on vacations, cryptocurrency, laser body sculpting, jewelry from Tiffany & Company, and shopping on Amazon. This is a story that truly makes your blood boil. Recent Mothman sightings. The Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant, West Virginia are well known, and we've covered them many times before. In case you've never heard of them, then here's a quick recap. On November 15, 1966, two couples from Point Pleasant, Roger and Linda Scarberry, and Steve and Mary Millette, reported seeing a large black creature with glowing red eyes near the TNT area, a former World War II munitions site. Linda described the creature as a 7-foot-tall, slender figure with white wings. Distressed, the couple fled, claiming that the creature chased their car while screeching until they reached the city limits. In the days that followed, more people came forward with sightings after local newspapers reported the story. Two volunteer firemen described the creature as a large bird with red eyes. Contractor Newell Partridge stated that when he shone a flashlight on the creature, its eyes glowed like bicycle reflections. He also linked buzzing noises from his TV and the disappearance of his German Shepherd to the creature's presence. Wildlife biologist Robert L. Smith from West Virginia University noted that the descriptions matched those of the sandhill crane, or shitepoke, both large birds that may have strayed from their migration route, which could explain why it went unrecognized in the area. However, sightings continued, and on December 15, 1967, the Silver Bridge collapsed, resulting in the deaths of 46 people. Moments before the bridge collapsed, the Mothman was supposedly seen standing on the bridge, and was therefore blamed for the tragedy. Since then, sightings of the Mothman have been rare. However, on November 20th, 2016, a date that closely coincided with the 50th anniversary of the first sighting, an unknown individual called the WSAZ news station to report a sighting of the Mothman while driving on Route 2 in Point Pleasant. The man who had recently moved to the city was reportedly unaware of the legend before he took 3 photographs that seemed to show the legendary cryptid. The photos were met with skepticism, with some believing they were produced with the intention of reigniting interest in the Mothman myth. However, there were others, including many locals, who believe this is photographic evidence of the elusive creature. We'd love to know if you have any experiences with the Mothman and have visited the area. Big Nose George's shoes. With the recent hype surrounding Ed Gein and his horrific artifacts made from human skin, we decided to explore a case that predates Gein by many years, one involving the notorious outlaw whose skin was made into a pair of shoes. George Parrott, better known as Big Nose George, was an outlaw and a member of a gang of horse thieves and train robbers who operated in the late 19th century in Wyoming and Montana. He earned his nickname due to his unusually prominent nose, and his criminal activities made him infamous across the Western Territories. In 1878, Parrott and his gang attempted to rob a Union Pacific train near Medicine Bow, Wyoming. The plan went awry, and 2 lawmen, Deputy Sheriff Robert Widowfield and Union Pacific Detective Tip Vincent, tracked the gang to a hideout near Elk Mountain. However, when the officers arrived, Parrott and his men ambushed them, murdering them and burying their bodies in a shallow grave The killings shocked the region, promoting a widespread manhunt. Parrott continued his criminal activities for several years, until he was finally captured in 1880 in Miles City, Montana, after drunkenly boasting about killing 2 lawmen. He was extradited to Wyoming, tried in Rawlins, and sentenced to hang. While awaiting execution, George attempted to escape from jail by attacking his guards, but the attempt failed, and when townspeople learned of this, they stormed the jail on March 22, 1881, dragged him out and lynched him from a telegraph pole in Rawlins. It was after his death that the story took a gruesome turn. Dr. Thomas Mackey and his young assistant Dr. John Eugene Osborne, who would later become the governor of Wyoming, quickly claimed the outlaw's body for medical study, and they conducted an autopsy, allegedly to study the brain of a criminal. But it seems they had a much more grotesque plan for the outlaw's remains. They sawed off the top of his head and kept it as a souvenir, later using it as an ashtray and a pen holder. Osborne then did something even more disturbing. He skinned the body and had pieces of parrot skin tanned into leather, from which he commissioned a pair of shoes and a small medical bag. The shoes were then fitted and worn by himself, and allegedly he wore them at his inauguration as governor. The rest of George's body was kept for decades, with his skull cap eventually ending up in the possession of a Rawlins pharmacist family. Then in the 1950s, workers discovered a whiskey barrel containing bones behind a building in Rawlins. The skull cap matched perfectly with the remains, confirming that they belonged to George. Today, Big Nose George's death mask, skull cap, and the infamous shoes made from his skin are displayed at the Carbon County Museum in Rawlins, Wyoming, a chilling relic of the brutal and strange justice of the Old West. Speaking of the Old West, we actually run a YouTube channel alongside one of our incredible team members, TJ, called Footprints of the Frontier, talking all things Wild West. Check it out in the description below. The Villisca Axe Murders, and now a haunted house. The Villisca Axe Murders occurred in Villisca, Iowa, on the night of June the 9th, 1912, and remains one of America's most infamous unsolved crimes. That evening, Josiah and Sarah Moore attended a church program with their 4 children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul, and invited neighbors Lena and Inya Stillinger to spend the night. Sometime after midnight, an unknown assailant entered the home and slaughtered all 8 victims as they slept. A neighbor discovered the horrific scene the next morning, curtains drawn, mirrors covered, and Josiah's own axe used to kill the family. The investigation quickly descended into chaos as townspeople and reporters trampled the crime scene, destroying evidence. Suspects included Reverend George Kelly, who confessed but was acquitted, and State Senator Frank F. Jones, who had a grudge against Josiah but was never charged. Investigators also examined drifters and serial killers like William Mansfield and Henry Lee Moore, yet poor forensics and corruption left the case unsolved. For years, Villisca lived under suspicion, wondering if the killer still walked among them. Over the next 90 years, the house at 508 East 2nd Street changed hands 13 times, often standing empty. Tenants in the 1960s and 70s fled after strange events. One renter reportedly fell into a trance while cooking and later awoke with a knife in his hand. By the 1900s, the home was in disrepair until Martha and Gavin Lynn restored it as a historical museum, recreating it exactly as it was that fateful night, complete with no electricity or plumbing. Now open to the public, the Villisca Axe Murder House attracts thousands of visitors and paranormal investigators. Guests report cold spots, footsteps, whispers, moving objects, and shadowy figures, often describing a heavy, oppressive energy that lingers throughout the home. One chilling incident occurred on November 7, 2014, when a 37-year-old paranormal investigator from Wisconsin stabbed himself in the room once occupied by the Stillinger sisters, later claiming he had no memory of it and had been trying to provoke the spirits. From the outside, it just looks like an ordinary, modest Midwestern home, but inside it carries the weight of a century-old mystery. I'd love to know if any of you have visited. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, sleep tight, and I'll see you tomorrow.